Got your eyes on a home? You'll need the local home loan experts at Guaranteed Rate Affinity. We are a fintech mortgage company that streamlined the home buying process. Our loan officers have direct access to the best real estate agents, giving you a completely seamless home buying experience. Featuring the industry's most advanced tech platform and customized loan solutions, our local loan officers can help you at any time from anywhere. Our digital mortgage and power bid approval will get you pre-approved in minutes with a strong offer even against all cash offers. You need speed to win in this market, and our same-day mortgage delivers, getting you approved in as little as 1 day. Getting you on track for the closing table in as fast as 10 days. Speaking of the closing table, our flash close options shorten the closing appointment from hours to minutes, or skip it altogether. It's your choice. We've made the home buying experience as fast, simple, and awesome as possible for countless others, and we'd love to help you next. Get pre-approved today with the experts at Guaranteed Rate Affinity, and let's get you home.
Welcome, welcome. And Logan, good to see you, my friend.
It is good to be back.
Well, you know what? I don't think we've released it yet, but you and I did with Lindsay Listansky, called Banker. We did the Better Together podcast just recently. So I think that'll be coming out the next week or so. Yeah.
She's the dashboard mommy and I'm the chart
daddy.
Yeah,
that's right. Exactly. Oh, that's awesome. Well, for those of you who don't know us, I always jump into these things, assume everybody knows who we are. But I am Dave Dickey, the president, chief executive officer, president of Guaranteed Rate Affinity. And then Logan Mohtashami is lead analyst with our good friends, and he's our good friend and good friends at Housing Wire, also known as Chart Daddy. For those of you that know him and follow him, we are certainly you're a fan favorite here at GRA. So we are super excited to kind of catch this. I don't know, I guess we'll call it like a mid-year catch up and see, how things are going and how things look at the outlook. And then we'll leave, and everyone will leave time for some Q&A as well. So if you have questions along the way, please drop those in that question box, and we'll try to get to as many as we can at the end, and then get you guys back to your day. But thanks for joining us, and Logan, thanks for joining us, and I will turn it to you.
It is wonderful to be here. I first want to apologize to everyone because before the year started, Sarah Wheeler, my podcast partner, and stuff, we have a top 20 business news podcast. And in the first week, I said, I just have a feeling that this year is going to be like the show 24 with Jack Bauer. I just, that we could have a lot of crazy headlines and things. And I am never going to say that ever again, because clearly it has been a very chaotic year, but everything post-COVID has been chaotic. So my job here today is to basically kind of showcase what's really going on. What does the data show? We are very unique in how we approach economics and housing economics because we provide a live tracker for everyone. We are about 2 to 3 months ahead of really everyone else on data, 6 months ahead of Case-Shiller on prices. So anybody who follows us knows you're never going to miss anything, but my job is to present the data and try to tell you. And what a fortuitous day to do this because of all the headlines. But yeah, 2026, rates, oil, inflation, jobs, AI, the Fed. So now what? So let's get to it with the first chart. This is my bread and butter chart. Whenever I go to events, I always ask how many people have been married for 20 years, who likes to slow dance. This is the 10-year yield and 30-year mortgage. And they've been slow dancing for decades and decades. And to me, 65% of where mortgage rates can go is really where the 10-year yield goes. And 65 to 75% of where the 10-year yield could go is pretty much Fed policy. And going into this year, the market had anticipated 2 to 3 rate cuts at some point in 2026. And a lot of things have changed. And last year, when inflation was rising, my tagline thing was labor over inflation. If the labor market gets softer, then mortgage rates can go down, right? And we've done this every single time in 2023, 2024, 2025, and 2026. The 10-year yield and mortgage rates, 10-year yield usually breaks under 4% and mortgage rates get to 6 or slightly under 6 when the market believes the economy is getting softer. It's not policy. So my job is to try to explain where we are with mortgage rates, but this gives you a visual of what I call the slow dance. Next chart.
Now that's not the one that we turn on the jazz music and have a glass of wine. Or is that the one?
The previous one, that's what we do. Absolutely. My running joke is, oh, actually, no. What you're talking about is the FICO chart. That's something we'll talk at the very end.
Yes.
Yeah, that's different. Now, here is Fed funds policy. So we have had no rate moves recently, but mortgage rates have, pretty much gone 75 basis points, really. And that's very normal, right? So when I start the year, I always go, where do I think the 10-year yield can range? This year, the low point was 380, the high was 460. Mortgage rates go between 5.75 and 6.75. Today, as we are talking, the 10-year yield's at 4.63. Mortgage rates are 6.75 using Mortgage News Daily pricing. Everything looks normal to me because what had happened earlier in the year is that the labor market got better. And the labor market getting better based on what the Federal Reserve is looking at. So this is where it gets very complicated. The Federal Reserve has written a lot of dissertations on this, that job growth really just needs to be over 33,000 to keep the unemployment rate at bay. And even though job growth compared to other years might not be big, we have surpassed their estimates. So this is where the Federal Reserve can use labor over inflation to be more hawkish. So one of the reasons why rates are elevated compared to earlier in the year is that the labor market got better. That's number one. And then the growth rate of inflation picked up, which the Federal Reserve basically said, we believe this will be the case for the first 6 months of the year, but then the tariff inflation will wind itself off because it's a one-time price hit. So that was their how you get 2 to 3 rate cuts. Now the conflict has happened, right? And we're in conflict 2.0. The 10-year yield does not like any negative headlines on the Iranian conflict. It starts to act a little bit more aggressively. But why? The Federal Reserve itself went more hawkish, right? We went from 2 to 3 rate cuts to 2 to 3 rate hikes discussion. That is very, very rare in the history of economics. So the Federal Reserve has already pushed up rates by their hawkish tone. And unless you get multiple inflation reports that are showing slower growth and get this conflict behind us, we're going to kind of be around here. For those that read our work at Housing Wire, follow me on Instagram or listen to the podcast, 2 months ago said, listen, if oil prices fall, don't kind of believe that the 10-year yield is going to go for it 1-to-1, because we went from 2 to 3 rate cuts to 2 to 3 rate hikes. So 6.75% should be the base. That's kind of where we've been the last, 6 weeks. But this is all happening with no rate cuts or hikes at all in the equation, right? The Federal Reserve has guided the markets to go higher. So what mortgage rates are doing right now looks perfectly normal if you believe 65 to 75% of this is Fed policy. And then the next 25 to 35% is the economic data there. So hopefully that can explain why rates are elevated, why oil prices went all the way down to below 70 and it didn't really move mortgage rates too much. And it looks normal to the history of economics. Next chart.
Hey, Logan, quick question. What
Sure.
drove sort of that expectation? So we knew we entered the year with 2 to 3 rate cuts anticipated. What were a couple of things that made that pivot where we're now, or the Fed really started and the market started to sort of anticipate potentially a couple rate hikes?
Last year, the labor market was getting worse than the Federal Reserve was talking about. So in a sense, they were forced to do how they deemed this to be insurance cuts. It's not that like they wanted to do this, but there's no way they can justify the labor market being solid with the lowest job growth in the 21st century. Last year, we averaged about 8,000 jobs per month. If it wasn't for healthcare services and social service jobs, we'd be down 800,000. So it would have been a negative year. Now, the economy wasn't in a recession. The growth in consumption data was fine all year long. But what was happening is this is how I look at tariffs. This is my second trade war. I remember the trade war in 2018. The first year of every trade war, nothing works because everybody doesn't know what's going on, right? We had Godzilla tariffs, and we shut down the government for a while. We had all these things that can impact companies trying to hire people. But the second year typically is better because the brunt of the damage is usually the first year. Same thing here, where job growth went from almost 8,000 jobs a month. Now we're close to 92,000 jobs per month in the last 6. the Federal Reserve looks at that as, okay, because inflation is above target, the labor data is not breaking. We give you guys numbers and we're going with it. And jobless claims are low and the unemployment rate is low. So we've switched because of the labor market first, then the inflation data was getting, and then the conflict, right? They were very, very negative about the conflict, oil prices, diesel prices, food prices. So they made that a big hawkish theme of theirs. But when the oil prices were going down, nothing, right? Because they're not comfortable with the growth rate of inflation being up here. And then we were still in easing bias. So they wanted to get rid of that easing bias, and they did. They got their jobs finished in that. With that said, we're pretty much at the peak of where mortgage rates can go. Today's podcast that we do in Housing Wire Daily, we really go into this, that I can only model out maybe 0.37 to 0.43 higher than where we are. So basically, it's really hard to get rates above 720 in this environment, all because of this chart, right? My tagline over the last few years is that mortgage spreads, hug a mortgage spreads. What the hell is a mortgage spread? Well, if the 10-year yield and 30-year yield do a slow dance, we like intimate 1970s soul dance, dancing very close. Mortgage spreads are the difference between the 10-year and 30-year mortgage. Usually it's 1.6 to 1.8 in recent history. What happened in 2023 was that we had the Silicon Valley banking crisis, and then the Fed kept on hiking during that. Mortgage spreads got above 3%. We've never had mortgage spreads above 3% since 1986, not during COVID, not during the great financial crisis. So in a sense, rates are about 1 to 1.25% higher than what they would normally be. But over time, the history of mortgage spreads, as you see here, they typically start to get better when the rate cut cycle starts to begin. Volatility compresses, early payoff risks goes away, very normal. So mortgage spreads are the only reason this year that rates have not been above 7% most of the year. So that's why I always tell people, hug a mortgage spreads. The history of mortgage spreads is that they stay good for a while, right? Unless you have the Federal Reserve really hiking rates or a recession just pops out of nowhere. This is a benefit. This is one of the reasons why home sales have stayed firm this year, is that it's been the lowest mortgage rate curve since late 2022. And even today, last year on this day, mortgage rates were 6.79%, were 6.75. So lowest mortgage rate curves, best housing demand we've seen to start the year. But typically what happens is when mortgage rates get below 6.64 and head towards 6%, housing demand gets better. When they get above 6.64 and head above 7%, housing demand gets worse. However, it's really, really hard. I mean, think about everything that's happened this year. Super hawkish Fed, oil prices above 100, the conflict 2.0 stage, inflation data above target, 6.75, right? Because Fed policy, even though the Fed has gotten more hawkish, this level with the 10-year yield is pricing in a lot. So it's going to take a lot more to really get rates to go up much hotter than that. So that's the positive side. It's very difficult to get rates above 7 or even in near 8 with where Fed policy is right now. So even though you can't get rates below 5.75%, really where Fed policy is, it's very difficult to get too much higher from where it is. So you're kind of in this compressed range right now. But this is it. This is the only reason that we're even here today, is because mortgage spreads have improved. Next chart. And this gives you a closer year over year a look at mortgage spreads, right? You know, as every year progressed on after 2023, mortgage spreads slowly improved. This is very normal. It takes some time. A lot of people didn't believe mortgage spreads would ever get better if the Federal Reserve weren't buying mortgage-backed securities. That has never been the case since the Peloponnesian War. They kind of just get better on their own through market trading, convexity, and less volatility. So being under 2% is a very, very big positive. Now, mortgage spreads, the numbers can be different depending on who you quote on mortgage rates, but this is how we do it. We talk about this every weekend with our tracker to keep people updated. But if this was 2023, 2024, and even 2025, mortgage rates are 7.25, or in 2023 cases, we're about near 780 right now. So this is the reason why we still have 6 handles and why everything is somewhat intact, and it'll be here for the next few years, right? It's very difficult to have spreads just accelerate up unless the Fed gets really aggressive or we get some type of credit market event out of nowhere. Next chart. I think it's one behind. Yes. Now, how we track inventory is a little bit different than everywhere. We have a live weekend tracker. We can track any inventory data in any state, zip code in America. But these are single family homes that are available for sale with no pending contract. This is why our numbers are different than the NAR, Redfin, or anybody else. They're much lower. And what we saw is if you look at 2022, housing was very, very unhealthy in 2020, 2021, especially early 2022. We only had 240,000 homes available for sale in the total country. You think about a country with over 340 million people, over 162 million people working, 5 generations of home buyers and sellers are going to buy. That was savagely unhealthy. But now we're in a much better environment. Price growth is not crashing, and it's not breaking away either. It's pretty much we're like 1 to 2% price growth. But what that means is that wages are outpacing home prices. The history of housing economics post World War II, we've had many times where home prices accelerate out of control. 1943 to 1947 was the hottest home price growth period post World War II. And then prices don't do much for a while. In the mid to late 70s, not a lot of people know this, but home prices actually rose faster from 1977 to 1979 with mortgage rates going from 8 to 13% than what we saw during COVID with sub 4% mortgage rates. Inventory was much higher. Labor force growth was much stronger back then, and so was inflation. But now we're at a very, very good level. And what we do is last year, I thought the housing market was shifting mid-June. And because of that, the growth rate of inventory simply can't sustain itself. If you see the big gap in early 2025, we had about 33% year-over-year growth. But if if demand picks up from where we are, inventory growth should slow down. 6 of the last 8 weeks have been negative year-over-year. We're barely up this year. This gives everyone an idea and also takes the doom porn away, right? We have so many crazy people on the internet and customers and clients. Everybody sees that and they think prices are crashing. Inventory is pretty much flat year-over-year this last week. The way you track our data for your own areas, you'll have access, you'll know what's going on. So you'll be months ahead of everyone else. If you're waiting for the existing home sales report or monthly data, it's too old and too stale. But even this year, with mortgage rates going up 75 basis points, inventory is flat, right? Our job is to give everyone what's happening today. And you'll see it in the data 2 or 3 months from now and not look backwards and wait for data, old stale data to come to you. So this gives you an idea of our inventory data. Next chart. And here's our new listings data. This is our kind of our bread and butter. Some of you might know Mike Simonson, who works for Compass now, but Housing Wire acquired Altos Research, so we have the database. But when Mike brought his data to Goldman Sachs and Lehman Brothers in 2007, Mike was trying to tell them that we have a way of tracking housing that's a little bit different, and the housing market's breaking. Well, Lehman Brothers kind of looked at him and said, I don't really know who you are. We have 85 analysts. So Mike just kind of walked away and saw Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs, on the other hand, took the data, saw it, took it for what it was saying, shorted the housing market, made $10 billion. Lehman Brothers went out of business next year. So we believe we're the most prolific trackers of housing data. We are not shy about it. We'll debate anybody on planet Earth. But it's an aggregate data right here. And this is the new listings. These are homes that come onto the market that don't have a contract right away. Normal is 80 to 100,000 during the peak seasonal months. We quite not haven't had a normal year post-COVID, but during the housing bubble crash years, this was running at 250 to 400,000 per week for years. Why? Those were distressed sellers that were not going to be buyers. You kind of keep housing economics simple. 70 to 80% of sellers are buyers, 20 to 30% of inventory that's left is not a seller that's going to be a buyer. If mortgage demand is growing, it's really hard to get inventory to grow. But if something was breaking, I'll see it first. Friday night, I write about it in our tracker Saturday morning, and everybody will know it. But the market was never showing stress, even all the way, even with these crazy foreclosure headlines you see. That's not how it works. So we try to make it a little bit more sophisticated and educated and talking about economics. And the new listing data looks pretty normal. We're in the seasonal decline. Nothing dramatic is happening out there. And we head on lower, and then we start the year over again. Next chart. Now, here's our total pending home sales data. Our sales data is basically on our weekly contracts. They usually come into the sales data 30 to 60 days later. Oddly enough, it wasn't rates that did anything. The snowstorm was actually the worst thing in 2026. The snowstorm impacted the data because there's parts of the U.S. that couldn't even get out of their house. But so far, our total pending home sales has been mostly positive. We only just recently got above 6.64% rates. We've been pretty much underneath that for a long time. And that explains why housing demand has been growing on a year-over-year basis most of the year. If you take the snowstorm out of it, you take Christmas and New Year's out of the equation, it's actually mostly been positive year-round. Not only this, but our next chart, our weekly pending sales data has been pretty much positive on a year-over-year basis as well. This last week was the first time we were slightly lower than last year. And what's going to happen for the rest of the year going out to 2026, the end, is that the comps are going to get much more difficult because housing demand was picking up right about this time. Last year, about this time, rates were 6.79. They started to head to 6%. Demand started to pick up. So just kind of remember, for my forecast, I thought we could get 237,000 more existing home sales if rates were six and a quarter and under. We probably would have done better than that this year, but even with elevated rates, things are still somewhat intact. And always kind of remember, millions and millions of people buy homes every single year. The last 3 years, the existing home sales on record, adjusting to population, were the lowest home sales ever. And mortgage rates have been between 6 to 8%. But every year that goes by where prices growth has slowed down and wages outstrip, housing gets a little bit more affordable. We don't have a lot of history of nominal home prices crashing outside of 2007 and 11. From 1942 to 2026, we never had a year that even had nominal home prices fall 1%. We've had real home prices fall adjusting to inflation, but it's very rare to get that. So what's occurring right now with home prices nationally is very normal with the history of housing economics. But for now, demand is still hold up. We're keeping an eye on this going out, that can we still grow with rates up here? But you get rates near 6 and a quarter or even under, housing demand can grow, not a problem. And it could grow for years coming out. But right now we're dealing with the conflict. So this last week we had a smidge, just a slight smidge year-over-year decline, and we'll keep an eye on this going out forward. Next chart. Now here's our price cut percentage. Not a lot of people know this. 1/3 of all homes in America have a price cut, right? You know, people tend to over list their home prices because they think their homes are worth more. And it's very normal to have a price cut percentage be 1/3 of the marketplace. This year, price cut percentages has been down on a year-over-year basis most of the year. Again, demand picks up a little bit. Inventory is not going anywhere. So it's kind of like a wash of a year between sellers and buyers on a national basis. There's parts of the country that have declines. There's parts of the country that have increases. Remember, we can break down every single zip code, every city, every state in America. My job is to explain to you how the national data works. And so when you look at this, you know, prices being up 1 to 2% year over year looks right with the current data that we're looking at. And Case-Shiller and all these indexes that we use are still like 6 months behind us. We always want to keep people ahead of everything, so you know what's happening 2 to 3 months out, not looking back 3 to 6 months. Next chart. And this is the existing home sales data going back to 1968. And as you can see here, those gray bars are recessions, right? A lot of people think that when you have a recession, home sales will tend to crash. That's not been the history, right? Because majority of all people are working during a recession, right? Majority of all home sellers and home buyers are working. The people that have the highest unemployment rate are usually high school dropouts, not basically homeowners in any way or fashion. But what we're doing here right now is to show that even with mortgage rates being between 6 to 8%, home sales are not going any lower. What we've seen with the history of housing economics, decades and decades, when this lull happens, if there is a recession, which in 16 years, we really haven't had a normal recession outside of COVID. So if there's a negativity in the data, that's actually positive for everyone listening, right? Because rates go lower. And I give you my best example is this market a lot of times reminds me of the early 1980s. The 1970s had super home price growth. And affordability was much worse actually in the early 1980s because mortgage rates went up to 18% and home price growth was faster in the late 70s. So a lot of people thought, well, nobody's going to buy homes again and everything. Well, the first recession in the early 19 rates went 2% lower, vertical increase in home sales. The second recession where everyone was really bearish and nobody's ever going to buy a house again and renters, not only did home sales go up vertical, and it grew for years. And that's the history of housing economics, that you're creating a very, very low base. Inventory is up, price growth is cooling down, right? When this happens, affordability gets better. If you get just even a 1% decrease, housing demand could grow, and it could grow for years to come, and it looks pretty normal, right? Again, the 1980s was worse affordability, 2 recessions, a lot more inventory, worse credit data. Not the case now. So the backdrop for everything is growth for years to come, because we've already had the sales crash and we're building that base out there. And inventory is up and price growth is cooling down. If home prices were up 6% this year, I would not be having this conversation, because that means home prices are still outpacing wages. Not the case out here. And just remember, even today, even 2023, 2024, and 2025, and 2026, we have near 5 million total home sales. The peak in the last decade, with affordability much better, was around 6 million. So we're missing like 750,000 to 1 million buyers out there. Just imagine if rates just go down 1% and just stay there. Sales can grow and grow for years and years to come. Now, we still have 5 generation of home buyers, 162 million people working. We have a massive demographic force that still buys and sells houses, and that explains why we still have near 5 million total home sales. Next chart. And this is kind of my crayon economics charts. If you run into people that keep on saying it's housing 2008, housing 2008, or Redfin had this chart, I don't think they show it anymore. It's the greatest seller versus buyer's market in history. I go, homies, look at 2007. 2007 says hold my beer, right? Normal active listings in America is between 2 to 2.5 million for decades. Even today, as we talk, active inventory is 1.56 million. 3 years after the biggest crash in home sales. Now, I wanted to show you, you look at that 2005 levels. Active inventory was 2.5 million. Home sales crashed from 7.2 million all the way down to 3.8 million in 2008. Inventory went from 2.5 million to 4 million within 2 years. Inventory went vertical. Here we are. Inventory looks pretty normal where mortgage demand is. So even today, as we speak, we're actually not even back to normal levels, and housing affordability is getting better. So if you need to visually show your clients that are still petrified about this 20 or 30 or 40 or 50% price crash that people are talking about, here it is. You show them a model and you tell them from 1942 to 2026, if you take 2007-11 out of the equation, no matter what is happening, no matter how many recessions and inflations and all these things, it's really rare for nominal home prices to fall, let alone a crash. A crash has to do with distressed sales, underwater mortgages. You know, over 23% of homes were underwater in 2010, and we had over 15 million loans of delinquencies. Now, 40% of homes don't even have a mortgage. The loan to value data is very low. So this is a good visual for you to remember, and also for you to explain to your clients in very, very simple. This is why we do crayon economics, to make the point as simple as possible. Next chart. And this is my all-time favorite chart. When I die, Sarah Wheeler, my podcast partner, I told her, make sure it says Chart Daddy on my tombstone, but you put this chart. When somebody keeps on telling me it's housing 2008, I go, homie, it's not even 2005, 6, 7, or 8. And we're doing it again. Adams foreclosure data, 21% higher year over year. You see, I don't know if you guys could even see that little black line at the end. There's their foreclosure crisis. I've been doing this for a very long time. Our family's been in banking since the late 1950s, and we have seen so many recessions over and over again. We've only had one foreclosure crisis post-World War II. That's when we had a credit boom and a credit bust and underwater mortgages and 4 million active listings and new listings data at 250 to 400,000. We call this doom porn trash. 99.9% of the people in the internet are not housing analysts. They're just grifters out there. But this is another crayon economics that you can get this chart, show your clients, show your Uncle Dave in Thanksgiving and Christmas, who keeps on saying it's housing 2008, and there's their foreclosure crisis. It's too small. It's not going to get the job done. But you, as loan officers or real estate agents, your job is to explain. My job as a chart daddy is to give you the tools and just show them this and go, man, the housing credit market was breaking 4 years before the job loss recession even happened in 2008. Now, kind of like not even back to pre-COVID levels. Next chart. And this is a big key. The loan to value data, all you loan officers will understand. LTVs in 2008 were running at 85, 86%. The loan to value is 44% right now. 40% of homes don't even have a mortgage. right? The whole housing dynamic structure is so different now that you couldn't get two different times in history, right? We have over 53 million or $53 trillion of home values. 38 trillion of that is equity out here. So back then when it was underwater mortgages, right, that had to be distressed sellers. You are a forced distressed seller that wasn't going to be a buyer. Now the loan to value is like the lowest levels ever in history, right? The credit markets are much different. So again, a visual for you all to show your clients to say, hey, this is what's going on, right? Because the YouTube people and TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, they have millions and millions of views, but they're all trash for a reason, right? They have to be to gain attention. You fight this with data, right? The best antidote for fear is data. Now you have access to the charts to make it as simple as possible. Next chart. And this is a chart we were gonna drink bourbon too. This is the FICO score chart in America now. When the Dodd-Frank bill came in 2010, it created the qualified mortgage that started the process. By 2014, that became a law. Housing credit in America has never looked better in the history of the world, right? Majority of people are 760 and above. There's no FICO score inflation or anything. This has been here for 15 years, right? Once everybody has a 30-year fixed product, right? Most loans are 30-year fixed debt costs, rising wages, more disposable income. I could show you 100 charts that look this good, but this, like my counterparts in other countries hate us for this. Why? Because we have the 30-year fix. The 30-year fix was designed to shelter, especially during an inflation period, but especially if everything cost goes up, that debt cost stays the same. And people go, oh, property taxes, insurance. Guys, we've had property taxes and insurance go up in the national data. It's not creating any stress sellers. Why? Because homeowners are different. They make a lot more money than renters, and their cash flow looks better. And here's another visual chart. And this chart looks so beautiful. I always tell people at events that, around 8 o'clock at night, I bring out my bourbon, I bring out my jazz music, and I sit here and I look at this chart and go, say how beautiful she looks. This is because all of you put your clients into great 30-year fixed products, and during COVID, you refinance them. And the thing about low rates, a lot of people think there's like a mortgage rate lockdown. Just kind of remember, we have more people with 6% plus mortgages than 3% and under. Why? Because every single year, people have been selling their low mortgage rates to buy homes because life finds a way. And now affordability is getting better. Home price growth is not accelerating anymore. You're building a big foundation, and you have 5 generation of home buyers ready to go. Housing economics, boy, it's telling you you got years of growth ahead of you because you already had the sales crash and you created that lull base out there. And if rates just stayed near 6% housing demand, it would have been a little bit better. Inventory might have been a little bit lower. Price growth just a tad, maybe hotter. But outside of that, it looks a very healthy market. But we have so much noise going on that we're always predicated to think that, well, here comes the big crash, here comes home price. And if something like that is happening, we will know it first because we get the early data and it's never been there. And your job is not only to understand it, but now you will have access and charts, and now you'll know how to explain it. And that's the key, right? Anybody could put a chart out there and talk about it, but once you understand it, you become, in a sense, the expert for your clients and their referrals and everybody, and you can prove it with data out there because remember, there's so much crazy noise. And the final one, if you want access, right? Just a few ways. You could follow me on Instagram. It's my name. Housing Wire, if you could get this, the subscription gives you not only access to my articles, we have something called Housing Wire Intelligence now. Now, Housing Wire Intelligence means you can get it for your own zip code. Everything I just showed you is for the national data, but you can break it down in Illinois, in Florida, in New Jersey, in California, Los Angeles, New York, any city, any zip code even, you could get all the data. So my job is to teach you how the data works, but you can even break it down to a lower level. That's why our work has always been popular. We believe we can teach the national economic story, both on the economic side, the mortgage side, real estate side, and the inventory side. So you get the kind of the full picture out here. Housing Wire Daily is a top 20 business news podcast. We're on 4 times a week, Sarah Wheeler and I. My job is just to kind of keep people at bay of what's going on. We go over mortgage rates and today, but hopefully this presentation gives you an idea of what's happening today on current data that'll be here for the next 2 months. And then we take it one day at a time because that's what us nerds do, right? Everyone needs one good nerdy friend in their life. Let the chart daddy be yours.
Let the chart daddy be your nerd. I love it. And folks, while you're out there, if you've got questions, just drop those in there, and we'll be here for some Q&A. And hopefully, what you guys took from this is, and you've said this a lot, um, over the last several years, growth for years to come. And a lot of times we get myopically focused on a data point or something we've heard or something. We don't zoom out to see exactly what you showed us, which is the health of the market that we're in, but also the demographics that we're in and the demographic waves still to come. But I hadn't really put that into context. I think the first time I've probably heard you say, or you've said it, but I contextualize it, that we've got 5 generations in play.
Yeah, when you look at the buyer profile, the silent generation is still buying. Gen Z is starting to pick up. They're starting to get in their first time home buyer age, so they are picking up on the buyer side. You have Gen A that is actually behind them as well. But the millennials are the biggest housing demographic patch in America. There's over 50 million of them working, and the greatest generation of all time, Gen X, right? We're the second biggest percentage of home buyers, and they're typically would be in that move up buyer stage, and they're all buying in the curve. And just remember kind of how to keep it simple. Even in the last decade, with affordability better and inventory up, and rates between 3.25% and 5%, total home sales were around 6 million at the peak, just at the peak level. So you're not missing much to get to that next level. Of course, the new home sales market, the builders are at 2019 levels still because they can offer sub 6% mortgage rates. If we had that same backdrop here, you're looking at 1 to 1.3 million more existing home sales in there. But the Federal Reserve does not make policy around the existing home sales market. Their policy is basically price stability and kind of full employment. So the builders are able to do this, but now we're starting to get a better mortgage spreads, and hopefully that explains why housing held up better than most people thought. If it wasn't for spreads, mortgage rates would be above 7%. Housing growth, sales growth typically gets to slow down, but we're in a much healthier environment now than COVID, when prices were going up 20% year over year, and too many people were bidding on too few homes. Now we're in a more healthier environment. Even though inventory is not back to normal, it's good enough to keep things kind of at bay.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, questions, drop them in. And I want to reiterate, just to be sure you caught. So here you've got the QR code to subscribe to Housing Wire. And I use it daily. And I also use the charts weekly in my own market updates. So that's one place. You mentioned, Logan, you mentioned, social media. So Instagram, look for Logan Mohtashami on Instagram. And the beautiful thing is there, you're often giving multiple updates a day if there's something happening, intraday.
I don't ever stop. So, I'm 24/7. I'm looking at the bond market and commodities all the time. So I give daily updates. And again, to keep everyone at bay of what's going on, because economics never sleeps. It doesn't take, there's no time off, right? So we don't, like, I don't believe in like forecasting mortgage rates and giving you a quarterly update. No, we're here 24/7 to tell you what's going on, because the 10-year yield and 30-year mortgage have been doing that slow dance, a little Jodeci, a little Usher, and they don't stop, right? So we have to keep abreast of everything that's going on that can impact it on a daily basis, not a monthly basis or a quarterly basis or a year, but a daily basis, 24/7.
Yeah, 24/7 and live in the moment, Yeah, and I feel like Sarah should be here. I feel like we're missing something. Sarah's not
Sarah
here.
just called me. She totally forgot.
Did she?
She's like, but yeah, Sarah usually is. And Sarah, Wheeler, and myself, we started our podcast about 4 or 5 years ago. We never intended it to be like one of the top
it's
podcasts in America,
huge.
but we
Yeah,
keep it entertaining and fun
you do.
and try to keep everyone at bay of going on. We understand that doom porn sells and just so much bad information out there, but I try to make it fun to learn and not so geeky. I love my economist friends. I love them to death. There sometimes.
You guys make it a lot more fun. And that's a Housing Wire Daily podcast.
Yes, on Apple and Spotify. We have a YouTube page as well. So again, our job is to keep everyone at bay, make it easier for you to understand so you could focus on your work and your family and things that really matter, but also make you as knowledgeable as possible.
Yeah, thank you for that. I rely on you a lot. And, for loan officers and agents, what I would tell you here, now we've entered the back half of the year, follow Logan. It keeps everything It's right. It's happening in the moment. So the data he's giving you is live. As you said, well, I think we get like home sales on Friday or something. But the thing with that data is it's telling me something that you already told me like 2 months ago. So you keep it fresh. So stay educated, and then go forth and work together. The biggest opportunity I see right now for real estate agents and loan officers is actually to work together on your highest dollar producing activities. Oftentimes we're working separate. So we've got somebody selling homes, and then I kind of hand it off and refer it to somebody who can handle the mortgage. The more you work together and create joint activities together, the better you'll do, because you both have skill sets, you both have active databases, and the best loan officers and agents right now are overlapping. So they're actually taking the mindset of instead of just doing business together, they're thinking, well, how do we grow our business together? So part of it is educated, give value to you, your clients, your agents, and then go forth and get busy. The back half of the year is there for the taking for those that are going to go after it. And no questions, no other questions here. So it looks like we're good, Logan. Thank you so much for joining.
Pleasure as always. Can't wait to see you at the next event, and everyone enjoy. And if you do have ever questions, always find me on social media. I love to answer them.
Yeah. Amen. All right, my friend. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for joining. Have an awesome day. Let's go conquer the back half of the year together, and stay close to Logan. He'll keep you educated.
Got your eyes on a home? You'll need the local home loan experts at Guaranteed Rate Affinity. We are a fintech mortgage company that streamlined the home buying process. Our loan officers have direct access to the best real estate agents, giving you a completely seamless home buying experience. Featuring the industry's most advanced tech platform and customized loan solutions, our local loan officers can help you at any time from anywhere. Our digital mortgage and power bid approval will get you pre-approved in minutes with a strong offer, even against all cash offers. You need speed to win in this market, and our same-day mortgage delivers, getting you approved in as little as 1 day. Getting you on track for the closing table in as fast as 10 days. Speaking of the closing table, our flash close options shorten the closing appointment from hours to minutes, or skip it altogether. It's your choice. We've made the home buying experience as fast, simple, and awesome as possible for countless others, and we'd love to help you next. Get pre-approved today with the experts at Guaranteed Rate Affinity, and let's get you home.